The boundaries which divide life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and the other begins? That's from Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Premature Burial. And if you're like me, you like a good story about premature burial. Um, Poe's works are full of premature burials, right? Um, his poems, his short stories, all seem to have that, well, not all, but a lot of them have that running as a motif. Think about the fall of the House of Usher with Madeline being buried alive by her brother, Roderick, and coming back to exact her revenge. But today I wanted to talk about the real life legend of Julia Legare. She was prematurely buried in her tomb, the story goes, and clawed her way out, or tried to. Anyway, Julia was born in 1829 to a rather well-off family. She's the child of Captain William Seabrook and Elizabeth Emma Eddings, and they lived on Edisto Island in South Carolina. The family owned some plantations and a thriving ferry business, so not hurting for money in any way. The story goes that Julia contracted diphtheria. Usually that's the illness that's named, and passed away. And she was interred in the family tomb and was not discovered. Again, the error wasn't discovered until after her brother died some 6 months later and the tomb was opened. Of course, Julia was found slumped near the door of the tomb, her fingers all bloodied and messed up from trying to claw her way out. And since that time, from that day forward, no one has been able to install a door on her tomb. The door will be found taken apart, taken off, not able to stand upright for some reason, just messed up. They cannot seem to keep a door on this tomb. And that's part of the legend. She doesn't want it shut up, right? Of course, who would after that? My little connection to this comes along with visiting Edisto Island. We had gone there to vacation when we were living in South Carolina. Didn't really know about Julia Legare at that point. We were looking up ghost stories of the area, as one does, while we were driving down there, and saw this story and saw that she was buried in the Presbyterian Church Cemetery, which, as we were driving, we had realized we had just passed. So we did a U-turn, went back, and walked around the cemetery until we found her tomb. And I just have to say that Edisto Island itself is beautiful. If you imagine sort of your quintessential southern sort of spooky look with the huge live oaks and the Spanish moss hanging down, that's what it looks like. And the cemetery is gorgeous. Again, with the Spanish moss, wrought iron around a lot of the little grave plots, faded tombstones, etc. The church is very beautiful itself, too. It has white columns and a big bell tower, but it wasn't constructed until 1831. The congregation for this church had been in existence since 1685, and the churchyard originated in the 1770s. So the burying grounds was there before the church even was. And it just has that beautiful, quintessential, romantic, spooky feel about it. Poe would have loved it, probably would have wandered around the graves, getting some inspiration there. But the Legare Mausoleum is set towards the back of the cemetery. And it's really not a fancy thing. It's like a sandy colored stone. I don't know, maybe 10 feet? It's not very large. And it has a peaked roof. And above the door is inscribed J.B. Legare, which is her husband. When you look inside the mausoleum, there is a little shelf with 3 tombstones. So it's her husband, herself, and her son who are buried in the mausoleum. And there's a little stone on the ground that almost looks like it's meant to be a little pillow. And no door, right? So true to legend, there is no door. At least there wasn't when we visited. When we did go inside, we saw faded flowers and a lot of coins that people had left, I guess, in honor of Julia, because the legend is pretty well known, especially down there. So, kind of cool. We didn't see any scratch marks, nothing to indicate that someone perhaps had gone to some really frightening end there. And I'm going to try again to post my pictures of the place, if it'll let me. I tried last time with a video, and it didn't work. But anyway. So, was she buried alive? Probably not. This is probably simply a legend. That doesn't mean, though, that it's any less creepy to think about. Some people actually have a phobia of being buried alive, and it's called tophobia. And in the 1800s, the rumor is people had bells installed. There were actually patents registered for devices that would alert people to your being buried alive. Whether or not people actually use these, we don't know. But did anyone actually survive being buried alive? I hate to think about how many people maybe that have sort of succumbed to this horrible fate. But there are some cases of victims who survived. In 1884, a woman named Anna Hockwell passed away at her brother's wedding on January 10th. And then, for some reason, she needed to be exhumed. I'm not certain why. But she was pretty much the real-life Julia Legare. Her fingers, they call them gnawed, but they were just chewed or worn down to the bone. And I kind of imagine that as sort of scratching, desperately trying to get out of the coffin. Her body was displaced. She was lying on her right side. A lot of her hair had been torn out. And to imagine going through that is a pretty horrible thing. I have found some other stories of folks who survived. I think the latest one was in the 1950s. I will go back and try to research that some more, but that's the story of Julia Legare. If you can get to Edisto Island, highly recommend it. Highly recommend seeking out her family mausoleum, simply because it's absolutely gorgeous place. And if you are a person who enjoys roaming around cemeteries, some of us do, hey, it's fun. This is definitely a beautiful place to go and experience. So, this is Wandering Nix. Please, folks, if you like the story, you want to hear more stuff like this, give us a like, follow us, all the good stuff, and subscribe to the channel. Help us out. We're very new, and we are just trying to get ourselves rolling. So, if you listened this far, I appreciate it more than you know. Thanks a lot.